Thank you very much for having me here. I've always had an interest in outreach and education. And over the past 10 years or so, I've been heavily involved in designing and delivering science outreach activities. I've taught undergraduate courses. And in more recent years, I've started and helped organize a citizen science program. That's kind of how I got into all this. But today, I want to focus on one thing, and that's Wikipedia, right? Now, I remember way back when I was still an undergrad, um, Wikipedia was still very new, and occasionally my professors would talk about it, and the message they give me basically boils down to that Wikipedia is essentially a unverified and unreliable source of information. Uh, I thought so too. And in fact, if you use more modern terminology, some might say that Wikipedia is fake news, right? But over the years, I've learned that my understanding of Wikipedia was actually based on a lot of misconceptions. So I hope today I can help dispel a few of those misconceptions. And after that, show how Wikipedia actually better reflects how knowledge is actually produced, and discuss how we can harness its power into our own teaching and enhance learning for students. Okay, so starting with misconceptions. This is a quote I saw earlier that said, Wikipedia is not always an accurate or updated reflection of the academy. And, that's kind of true sometimes. But I think it is also a really good starting point for us to dig into Wikipedia to think about some of its features that we might not normally use. For example, this is the Wikipedia article for the Voyager 1 space probe. Okay, so if you're a space nerd, then you will know that just this last week, Voyager 1 celebrated its 40th birthday. It's beyond our solar system now, but still sending back data. I think that's really exciting. But anyway, what I wanted to show you is that if you look at the top of the article, you will see a series of tabs, right? There's the Talk tab, and then there's the View History tab. So if you go into those and look at the Talk tab, you will see a super long discussion thread where people actually peer review the article and provide a lot of critique. And also editors will come here to provide comments on how to make changes to the article, how to improve it, and all of that stuff. There's a whole lively discussion going on behind the article. Another thing is that if you click on the View History tab, you will see a very long scrollable list that takes you through the whole history of the article with every single tiny change that anyone has ever made to it. And if you click on any one of these links, it'll be like a time machine that takes you back to what the article looked like at that point in time. I think that's pretty cool. But I think it's reasonable for people to ask, okay, that's fun, but isn't it possible that people might introduce mistakes into the article, whether inadvertently or not? And yes, that happens sometimes, but I think we need to think of that as a reflection of the reality of how knowledge is created. In fact, when there are mistakes, they are corrected very quickly on Wikipedia. Just to give you an example, just over 10 years ago, the very famous American comedian, Stephen Colbert, he did a prank on his show where he asked his audience to go change some Wikipedia articles, okay? And one of the articles that was changed was Babar the elephant, who is a children's book character, right? Some of you might have read about this elephant. Now, if you use that View History feature and go back in time to 2006, you will see that at one point someone added a sentence saying Babar the elephant has tripled in popularity in the past 6 months. But this was a completely baseless statement that someone randomly added as part of that prank. But if you look at the top part of this page and look at the metadata for all of the changes that happened, you will see that this thing was caught by an editor of Wikipedia and corrected in less than 2 minutes. This is amazing. I mean, think about it. Okay, so how many academic journals out there have an editing turnaround time of 2 minutes. Okay? And how many journalists out there have an international army of editors constantly doing things like this and correcting articles that are constantly being updated by a ton of people all the time, right? So what I think is that textbooks have a very important role to play in education, and obviously we should use them. But Wikipedia reminds us that knowledge is much more than just a static collection of facts. Wikipedia reminds us that the production of knowledge is a very dynamic and iterative process that includes making mistakes. And this is something we can learn from. Wikipedia also reminds us that we are always building on what came before and how we all have a responsibility to share what we learn so that other people can continue to build on it. So going back to this quote, it is actually not a criticism of Wikipedia. In fact, it was from Jamie Matheson, who is of the Wiki Education Foundation, when she was talking about how Wikipedia can actually teach us about how knowledge is produced. But how do we actually harness this to enhance learning, right? Well, when I think about learning, and from my own experience, I know that the best way to learn something is to teach it. And when I did teaching back in the day, that meant, preparing lectures, delivering them to a room full of undergraduate students. And that works well, but today, another thing we can do is to teach by contributing to Wikipedia articles. So I just want to give you a few examples of how universities have successfully done this in their curriculum and some of the benefits that they derive from that. One of the big benefits is that it helps put learning in context for the students when they write. And what I mean is that in a traditional kind of setting, such as in this case, where a bunch of students took a course on behavioral ecology. Okay, this is from Washington University a few years ago. They have to search through your usual lectures and learn about animal behavior and all of that scientific stuff. But the students were also assigned individual Wikipedia articles on a bunch of different social insects. And they have to take what they learned about animal behavior and contribute to those articles by providing an animal behavior perspective. So they were able to put their knowledge to use by writing for these articles. And over that term, these students added 369,000 words to more than 260 articles on Wikipedia. This is extremely prolific, and I find that very exciting. But another example that I really love is this one, which was an American history class at Boston College. So one of the students there, she wrote an article on a person called Susan Picot, who is in this picture. And this was a Native American woman who eventually became a very prominent doctor and reformer in the 19th century. And the student who worked on this article, she had to put her knowledge into context by learning about all aspects of this person, whether that's history, politics, medicine, or even issues around race, in order to complete this Wikipedia article. And I think this is a great example of how Wikipedia assignments can help us highlight issues around diversity, which is also a very important topic today. Now, another benefit is that it turns out that students become much more engaged and motivated to do well on their writing assignments when it's about Wikipedia. This is because if you look at a traditional classroom setting, right, when I write a writing assignment for my professor, I am essentially writing for an audience of one. And after they grade my assignment, it just gathers dust and no one reads it again. But Wikipedia is completely different. Recently, there was a study done by the Knight Foundation, and they looked at the monthly average users of a lot of major news websites, okay? One of the biggest ones was, of course, CNN, which has 21 million users a month. That's a lot. But it's not a lot when you compare it to Wikipedia, which has 52 million monthly users. That's more than all of the other news sites in this study put together. And when students learn this, they become much more motivated to do a good job because they know that people will be reading it. Another thing is that the students gain an appreciation for our extremely privileged status in the university because we have access to knowledge, books, and journal articles that are locked up behind these expensive paywalls that most people never have access to. So they become really excited to liberate this knowledge outside of these paywalls in our ivory tower so that everyone can learn about it on Wikipedia. And if that's not enough, Wikipedia actually enforces very rigorous editing standards, often much more rigorous than most academic journals I've seen. There's an extensive set of guidelines that you can look up. And if the students don't do a good enough job in their writing, their articles will actually be rejected by Wikipedia's editors. So they have a motivation, in this case, to do a good job, because it's not just getting a bad grade. It's essentially an issue of whether they will fail the assignment because their writing gets rejected. So as part of doing this, I think a crucial thing is that the students will have to think very carefully about the sources of information that they use, and they have to critically evaluate different kinds of evidence so that they can summarize it in a truthful way in the article. And I think this kind of critical thinking is probably one of the most important skills that a student can learn in university, especially now in this post-truth world of alternative facts, right? So how can I actually use this in the courses I teach right now? Well, I think this is where the Wiki Education Foundation comes in. So they have a website. If you go there, they have a lot of instructor orientation material that tells you how people have been designing Wikipedia writing assignments for their students. They have a lot of brochures and booklets for instructors and students on how to do this. But what I find most exciting, and the last thing I want to talk about, is that if you talk to them, they will work with you to design a course timeline, syllabi, help you design assignments for your student, and wrap all of that up onto an interactive dashboard on their website where you can manage your course and work with your students dynamically. I think that's extremely exciting. So I want to end by just showing you some of the impact that they made since they started doing this in 2010. They've reached out and worked with 1,700 courses, attended by 35,000 students who wrote 46,000 Wikipedia articles made out of 35 million words. This is more than 2/3 the length of the entire Encyclopedia Britannica written by these students. But what I find is to be most amazing is that these articles written by the students are read by 282 million unique people every single academic term. This is most of the entire population of the United States reading these Wikipedia articles in just a single term throughout the academic year. So I'm really excited about what they're doing, and I would certainly be interested in incorporating this into my teaching when I do it. If you are interested, I highly encourage you to check out their website at wikiedu.org, and they're always happy to talk to you about how to work it into your teaching. If you're interested, I've got all of my slides up on zenodo.org, so you can download it for the links, and you can also build on it or critique it in any way you want. So I just like to leave you with a question of, I'm certainly very excited about this, but what do you think? Do you still think that Wikipedia is unreliable? Are you interested in using it in your teaching? I hope that this is at least a good starting point for all of us to think about the role of Wikipedia in education. So thank you very much.